Hello, my name is Tony Sicor, an orthopedic surgeon, and I had an interesting experience in my life. In 1994, I was 42 years old. I was at a community birthday party for my wife's family because there were 5 or 6 people celebrating their birthdays in August of that year. In 1994, it was easy to organize a party to gather everyone on that particular day. We were in a place called Athens, New York, at a lake called Lippy Hollow Lake, which has a somewhat sinister name due to the history of the Lippy Hollow legends. Anyway, I was put in charge of the grill and stayed outside doing that. It was a beautiful summer day. The sky was clear, and I was doing my job all day long. My mother wasn't there, so I decided to call her to see how she was doing. And I didn't pay attention to the fact that the sky had darkened and a large cloud had formed over the lake. But I was busy, so don't count me out on this. I went to the front of the building where we rented a pavilion. In front of the building, there was a payphone, so I walked to the front of the building and picked up the phone. I called my mom, but she was busy and didn't answer. After dialing it 5 or 6 times, I decided, well, I'll hang up and try again later. As I started to move the phone away from my face, there was a loud bang, and a huge flash of light came out of the phone and hit me in the face. I didn't realize what had happened. A storm had formed, and a lightning bolt struck the building. It came out of the phone, hit me in the face, and threw me back like a rag doll as I flew backward from the impact and the weird feeling of going forward. I was very confused because I thought something really strange had happened. So I stood there and looked around. I looked ahead, and there was the phone hanging. I looked to my right, and there was a staircase leading to the 2nd floor. I couldn't understand what was happening because I knew exactly what had occurred. There was no pen of thought or memory. Now, everything was different, and it didn't make sense. That moment, I heard my mother-in-law screaming at the top of the stairs, and she came flying down, running towards me, and I thought, this cannot be good. But it was as if I didn't see where I was. I was right in front of her, and she ran down the stairs. She didn't realize I was there. She ran to the left, and I thought, all right, I'll follow you that way. So I turned around and started walking toward where she was going. I found myself. I was completely shocked. I saw my body on the ground, and all those people were around it. I walked over to the body and realized, oh my God, I was dead. I thought, I felt a bit disappointed because I thought there should be some kind of thing that happens when you die. Like if we get touched or whistled at or something, but I didn't hear anything. It was just a moment. I was in front of the phone, and the next second, I was flying backward. Then, I had that strange feeling of moving forward, which I guess was me leaving my body. Now I was faced with the fact that the body was on the ground, but my consciousness was with me. It's very important to realize this because while I was there, I had these racing thoughts, and I realized, oh my God, I'm aware. I'm the consciousness of this empty shell on the ground, and I realized that whoever I am, I always am. There's no break in consciousness. There's no such thing as dying. Yes, we die, but we don't stop existing. We continue on, and consciousness goes on. As I stood there watching, I tried to call out to them, but nobody could hear or see me. I thought. She and her daughter were there. Her daughter was around 12 or 13 years old. She was waiting to use the phone because she wanted to call one of her friends. Her mother was sitting there with her. It turned out that her mother was a nurse and started bending down to give her CPR. At that moment, I thought, nobody can hear me. Nobody can see me. I feel stupid just standing here. Then, for some reason, I turned around and started walking toward the 2nd floor because I wanted to see my family. As I began to go up the stairs, it was really strange because I usually looked down at the floor to see where the stairs were so I wouldn't trip and fall flat on my face. When I got to the third step, I realized something was happening to my legs. They were starting to dissolve, and I thought, wow, this is getting out of control. I kept climbing the stairs, and when I got to the top, I had no shape at all. I was just a ball of energy. At that moment, the stairs opened to the left, but I didn't care. I simply passed through the wall and came out on the other side, right above my wife's head, right above my wife's head. She was sitting in a chair, painting children's faces. As there were several little kids around, I looked at her and at my children and had the feeling that they were going to be okay. I kept walking. It was like I was on a conveyor belt, over which I had no control. So, I moved diagonally across the room. When I went through the ceiling, things started to get interesting because I immediately fell into a river of pure positive energy. It was a bright, bluish-white light that seemed to come from a distant source, radiating to everything. This reminded me of when I was a child. I used to swim in a stream that had a deep area and crystal clear water, lying on the bottom to watch the sun. The sun shone through the water, and the rays looked brilliant. It reminded me of that. But the amazing thing about this light was that if you could imagine the utmost absolute peace, that was the only thing in that energy. I call it energy because I could not only see the energy coming, but I could also feel it. I could really see the shape of the energy, which was very strange because I was just looking at it. I can say that this energy was what made everything happen. I was looking at the trees and the slopes and could see electric wires. It was almost like a sine wave, a low-frequency vibration that ran through everything. And I thought, this must be divine energy. This must be what makes everything. It flooded me with nothing but love and peace. I don't think I can describe it any other way. And I thought that this was the best thing that had ever happened to me, that someone could experience that while floating in this river of pure positive energy. I had a recollection of the ups and downs of my past life. It was almost like a collage. It wasn't detailed at all, just a flash of one image, another image, and there was a certain knowledge that accompanied the images, similar to what you might see now. You look at an image and 1,000 words come with it. I was amazed at where I was going because it was truly an incredible journey. I knew I was going somewhere because I had speed and direction. It was taking me to a place. I had no idea where I was headed, but at that moment, I didn't care. I was so amazed by how wonderful it was, and as I moved forward, I reached a point where I was absolutely astonished by where I was going and what was happening. Then, it was as if someone had flipped a switch and suddenly I was back in my body. I remember while I was unconscious, I shouted to myself, "Please, don't make me do this. I don't want to go back." And I got furious. I went from absolute happiness to nothing but pain because that thing hit me in the face. It left a burn on my mouth and another on my foot. Where it came out, these things really hurt. And it seemed like many minutes passed before I could open my eyes and even regain consciousness. When I did, I looked, and there was a nurse sitting next to me. I wanted to thank her for saving my life, but all I could say was, "It's okay, just a doctor." She laughed and said, "Well, you weren't saying that a minute ago." I felt so stupid for saying that. I said, "Okay, the circuits aren't working very well, so I'm going to be quiet." At that moment, the police arrived and wanted to take me in an ambulance, and I said, "No way. I'm not going to sit in a hospital for hours just to have someone tell me that you got struck by lightning and you're alive." At that moment, I wasn't thinking very clearly either. I don't know why I should have left, but I didn't. I asked them to take me home. As I drove back home, I called my cardiologist and my neurologist and asked them to check me out, and they all did. They all said the same thing. You know, you're lucky to be alive, and that's how things are.